This session was about maritime infrastructures, research facilities, and heritage dynamics. And I think that starting from the talk of Professor Tare, he just gave us the hint, and considering this issue quite important of how our heritage is marketable or not. And this is a very big field of discussion, and we have seen in the presentation that it is a big issue for transforming a military island into a place that can be actually for the use of the public, but how to do it and how to sustain it, which is a problem, and how we can deal archaeological underwater research and getting to the point to have results actually. And the last paper was actually on how to exploit all the facilities that has been realized during the long time that maritime city like Florence were actually distributing along the Adriatic Sea and the Mediterranean. So I think that the questions are now to the audience, and so who wants to make direct questions to our speaker is most than welcome.
No problem at all. It's a question for Agamemnon. Thank you so much for your presentation and for introducing us to this fascinating project. There is a dispute, at least for those that are familiar with the history of cartography, and this dispute is about marine charts in antiquity. Once you did display and did show and explain to us this extremely sophisticated and impressive piece of technology. One encompassing lunar and solar cycles with this extremely sophisticated mechanism. As paleographer, have you ever came across any reference to the use of visual devices? I'm just keeping to a very abstract vocabulary, as you see, that could be used in these extensive practices of navigations in that part of the Aegean Sea or the Mediterranean Sea. Thank you.
Yes, very important. First of all, this mechanism contains all the astronomical knowledge existed, and the constructor put them all together in one mechanism, in one computer, let's say computer, because it is made to calculate and synchronically to see different astronomical events. This is one. And if you study deeper from point of view of mechanism, how it was constructed, how the gears were made to indicate and to make the cycles exactly, because it is very, very exact in the computation of the eclipses and other things. This is indeed a mechanical miracle of the antiquity. Unfortunately, we have no other evidence of existing another something like that. But perhaps Cicero had one of something like similar mechanism, because he says something about, yes, there is, but we are not sure that if it concerns this kind of mechanism or another thing. We know that in this period many different mechanisms circulated, also before also, according to Aristotle and Hieron, okay. But especially this, nothing yet. Okay. And let's make just one phrase. The main point of the study of this mechanism is to see that the inscriptions are written inside on this mechanism to help the user and to expand the knowledge. This is according to the Greek mentality of humanism, just to explain, to give the knowledge to the other, open knowledge, not secret. That's why. Otherwise, the constructor was able not to write anything on this. Me, as paleographer, I think that you have understand that my job was to read the inscriptions. Was a very, very difficult issue, that because the letters are very, very small, 2 millimeters each, and with the help of the tomographer, I was able, but not also easy, because to observe one letter, you must to go to the other, to create the word.
Yeah.
So, okay, I think you can understand. Many, many, many hours, I think hundreds of hours trying to read it. Okay.
You raise a very good point, actually, how, both the tangibility of this device, but the knowledge and the culture that is behind the realization of this piece of, extraordinary old astronomy is combined in this item. So the importance of that actually our cultural heritage is bringing to us is because you can tell about how human brain, human mind actually mixed up information and allows the other to share this information. This is actually the very great thing.
I invite you in Athens to see it in the National Museum. In Athens. Yes, it's available. And for me it was tangible, because I was obliged to work holding sometime this one part of this mechanism.
Is there any other question? Maybe it's kind of late, and we are freezing. Actually, so probably you have, okay.
This could be for all of you, but particularly those who talked about preservation, tourism, cultural heritage, those kind of related issues. I wonder if, and I'm sure you have, the problematics, that it can be problematic, linking tourism to preservation to cultural heritage. Because on the one hand, we all know, I believe, that tourism brings revenues, brings the public, helps promote projects politically, et cetera, so it's good. But on the other hand, we also know that tourists also consume culture. They don't necessarily engage with the culture the way the preservationists want them to. Anyway, you get the drift of what I'm saying. So I just would like to hear a little bit of what you yourselves, all of you engaged in this, think are some of the problems of this type of work.
Simply, from one hand, there is, of course, the consumption connected to the use of the tourism. So the resources, the gains, must be partially reinvested in the preservation, conservation, manutention Partly, in my opinion, another part must be reinvested locally in development of new meaning, more heritage for the future, because of is a competitive environment. I say in 200 years, perhaps Venice will be not so attractive as today, when we'll be not innovate the heritage and not only preserve it. I don't talk about competitive, aggressive, because I believe in the competition, in the cooperation, in competition between territories. But somehow this is the way, in my opinion. I don't know the other.
Well, I've been involved since 94, 95 with this dilemma that you just posted now, culture tourism and tourism. And when you start a project like Butrint, or now like Cezanne, of course you need the backing of the tourism market to make it self-sustained, to make it sort of in the eyes of the public, etc., etc. But for example, with Butrint, when I started a project there, we had only 2,000 visitors a year. Now we have 140,000 visitors. So now the management plan we did 15 years ago, it needs to be revised and see how you can deal with the people, because the site is very, very important. Now, how you do it, I mean, that's a challenge. Do we have a model to come with Albania explained? I don't know, but for example, what I'm doing at the moment is trying to, in the park, trying to create different options. So when you come to the site, you don't have to concentrate yourself to the main site, but also go around the area as well and sort of disperse the pressure that the monuments are having. But I think the culture tourism is sort of two-way traffic, because the countries have responsibility to make sort of, let's say, preserve their own culture, because as we know, tourism destroys local culture, destroys environment, etc., etc. And like in Corfu, for example, you eat English breakfast. Now, why do you eat English breakfast in Corfu? I have no idea, but that's what you do. Because the main tourists in Corfu are English. And so I see, I don't want, for example, in my country, that when you come there to eat Italian pizza. I mean, I don't like that. I would like to eat local Albanian food. But unfortunately, tourism, yes, gives that pressure. So the local people are very much responsible as a tourism. There is a great case, for example, a couple of years ago, where in an island in Greece, the whole village came out in protest to kick out the tourists, because a lot of naked tourists are running around, and they offended the village. But the village drove this kind of tourism itself. So I think is you know, a responsibility goes both ways. And I think also the traveler has a responsibility to respect the culture that he's going to visit. Otherwise, why bother? You know, stay home and look at Google Earth. So I think it's a process that goes both ways. And to sort of finish, I really liked your presentation on Philippines, and I'd like to give you a piece of information. You might like it, to include it for your next presentation. There is a national poem in Philippines, the Florante Laura. I don't know if you know, but apparently it's a very famous poem written by Baltazar, the national poet, which the subjects come from Albania. And I have no idea why the Philippines wrote this in 18, I don't know, whenever Baltazar was this famous poet, in Tagalog, is a whole book on Albania. So this thing that you presented today is another interesting piece to your puzzle.
I'll find out and I'll email you.
How much is the impact on the site that you were mentioning?
All right, use your
Is it
mark.
so impacting in these cases, or it is more sustainable?
Yes, I think there's some very interesting issues here. And I think one of the points to bear in mind is that we talked a lot about the distance between people and the maritime industry. And one of the attractions of having tourist attractions close to a working port is that people actually, they come down for their cappuccinos and shopping and so forth, but they also see a container ship passing close by. And it does at least expose them to the realities of the maritime world. The fact that you may have an educational institution like a maritime museum also close by means that you may induce a few of these people to, have their cappuccino and then maybe wander into the museum and learn a bit more as well. So I think it's that sense of place and experience that's very valuable, but I agree it can be very difficult to manage, and as the other speakers have said, there are some significant potential conflicts there. And
this is something I think that academia can actually help in, because if you are just training, your student that will become professionals in the future, in order to be sensitive to this kind of issue, and so management plan and, having provision on the impact, because we are taught how to conserve something, but conservation is, an ongoing everyday ongoing kind of work. So I think that we have to shift a little bit our aim, our goal, our sight. And there was a question devoted to Professor Davis in the former session, how we can actually suggest, for example, or support a proposal for a new museum, maritime museum, say in Singapore. Well, I think that we can think about this issue, and according to the experience of the others, we can get inside.
Well, I suppose from my point of view as a visitor to Singapore, I'm a little bit shocked that there isn't a thriving maritime museum. I know there was one once at Sentosa, I think it closed down. I don't know the details, but to my mind, if there's any one place in Asia where there should be a maritime museum, it should be Singapore.
True, definitely true. And according to your comments, big ship as in Venice, you can see them in the port of Singapore. I just saw it last Saturday in Sentosa. So, this issue of this kind of tourism is going to be, it is a reality. We have to deal with reality, and but doing a good management plan and renovating the management plan, because being a UNESCO site doesn't mean anything if you are not keeping the idea of what does it mean being a UNESCO site. So you have to update, and you have the permeability, I think, of reality nowadays. We are living with this. We are dealing with digital facilities now. So it is an ongoing and never-stopping kind of thing.
In this sense, it's crucial, not only the academy, what the academy can do, but also what was told in the presentation of the professor, some of the public institution capability to manage correctly the PPP, the public-private partnership. Yes. That's the key, in my opinion.
That's the key. Definitely the key. No way. Any other curiosity, any other question, any other issue that can be raised by the listener? Okay, so I think that we can really thank our speaker for their time and for their wisdom. Thank you very much.